If I were breaking into tech sales today, this is exactly what I would do step by step. Now it's important to note, throughout this video, I'm going to reference other videos that I've made as well. But I think the important thing is to watch this all the way through, get the entire framework down, and then as you understand the best ways of doing that, I've got relevant videos again that will talk through each of those in much greater depth. As a starting point, and I know this might sound trivial, but how much do you understand about tech sales? Do you know things like discovery calls? Do you know things like what an SDR even means, which is the entry-level position? As you start to understand these things, do you now know maybe what kind of technology you want to sell or what kind of company you want to work for? Again, we don't have to get specific. We don't have to get laser focused in on one specific company. But ideally, again, you know what an SDR is. You know a little bit about the tech sales landscape, like a discovery call. Maybe you've seen some YouTube videos about what actual cold calls are like, etc. At this point, now we can kind of move on to step 2, which is identifying your background and making it more presentable for tech sales. So what is your background? It's fine if you don't have tech experience. It's fine if you don't have sales experience. But do you have past experience that you can somehow relate to a revenue generating activity, or maybe you've done some type of even door-to-door sales or otherwise? I've got an entire free 45-minute bootcamp talking about how to take your past experience and mold it into a resume and a LinkedIn profile that's acceptable. So again, just restating, and I'm going to do this again and again. 1, you have a firm understanding of tech sales, SDR, things like discovery calls, etc. You don't have to spend a ton of time here, but if you don't know anything about it, and tech sales is this magical place with high salary, you don't know enough about what tech sales is, what an SDR is, what a discovery call is. Step 2, as you go through things like the free bootcamp that I made, can you take your past experience, even if it's not tech, even if it's not sales, and start to think of it in a way that's revenue generating or showing that you had an impact in a nonprofit or a student organization, whatever it might be. Now that we have our resume and LinkedIn optimized in place, now we're not going to actively apply for jobs, but we're going to actually start creating lists of companies that we want to work for. I've also got a video on LinkedIn of how you can filter down by job type, by hybrid, remote, on-site. It's a very easy thing to do on LinkedIn, but this is going to accomplish 2 different things. Again, because we've already decided what kind of company we want to work at, whether it's a big company, whether we want to go into a startup, whether we want to sell a specific type of technology like cloud tools or something like that, or we want to specifically seek out companies that have SDR training at the company. Those are things we can filter for, and not only that, but we can have a prepared resume and LinkedIn optimized not just for tech sales, but for those specific jobs. As we create a list, that is going to be a video I have in the description as well in terms of how to do that very quickly. We can create a large list on LinkedIn and filter down by jobs that fit our background or fit our desired type of company, but also make sure to set alerts on LinkedIn so anytime a future job listing comes along that fits the criteria you've put in, you will be the first person to be notified and can be in a position to apply right away. Now, as you have all that information in a row, again, we have a firm understanding of tech sales. We spent maybe 2 solid, actual focused hours looking at SDR. What is a cold call? What is a discovery call? What is a day in the life of tech sales? We now, again, we optimize our resume, we optimize our LinkedIn for our past experience. As we're forming lists of these different companies that we want to work for, now we can actually begin applying. And the way to do this, again, is not just to hit apply to a million different things. And this is one of the biggest things that I say repeatedly on different videos throughout this channel, is so many people breaking in just want to get their resume like perfect and just want to get their LinkedIn done like as quickly as possible, no extra thought into it. Like, a resume just gets you in the door. They'll send it out to 150 places, not hear anything, and then ask why. And again, the whole purpose of this and what I talk about in much greater depth in the videos I mentioned is that by having an idea of what kind of company you want to work for, you can apply to 10 to 15 companies and get a much higher interview rate than if you spray it out to 150 because you're very focused, because in your resume and in your LinkedIn, you're clearly articulating why you want to work at this type of company. And in addition to applying now on this list on LinkedIn, what we're going to do is use the LinkedIn listing to find the hiring or sales manager and reach out to them directly. That's another video I'm going to link below in terms of messages I've used in the past to get interviews. I've also got some templates that I'll link in the description in terms of messages you can use to pique a manager's interest. The important thing here is to keep it very short and succinct. Maybe you have one sentence about something you have in common. Maybe you have one sentence about what you like about that company that you're applying to. And if you have no sales experience or whatever, one very quick sentence of why you're ready to break into tech sales. I go into that in much greater depth in the templates and also a future video that I will be linking in hindsight once this is done. Now, the important part. This, especially if you have no tech sales experience, is 100% okay, but you need to expect to get no responses from a lot of different people. Again, The temptation is when that happens, now just pray and spray. You get desperate and you do all these different things. But wait, get 10 to 15 great companies that you want to work for out of the gate, prioritize them from top to bottom, and the ones that are the lowest priority or the least interesting, these are the ones that you're going to experiment with not only applying, but messaging that manager in parallel. Because again, at the end of the day, while maybe you would take any tech sales job, if it's the lower priority ones and that messaging doesn't work, now we know and we can iterate and have better messaging for our higher priority targets. So that is what I would recommend from an application standpoint. Have that list of maybe 10 to 15 companies, work our way and prioritize them from what looks coolest to least, and work our way up and maybe do 3 a day starting out if you have that flexibility. If you are on more of a time crunch, certainly do more. Get some feedback, consistently start applying, expect to hear no responses or expect to hear, sorry, not a fit, whatever it is. This is going to take a long time in terms of the number of people you have to reach out to. And I hate to get all TED Talky and Hallmark card, but you need one yes to get a tech sales job. So don't sit here, and again, I'm not saying 15 is all you need, but if you have a very focused list of 15, your interview rate and ability to communicate with managers is going to be much higher than if you pray and spray that resume to 150 different people. So now that we've done all of these different things, we're starting to get bites on interviews. I've got different videos about what interviews are like. That is another one that's going to be linked below. And also I would recommend, we do have a course if desired. Once you get to that stage, we have a full boot camp if that's something of interest. And we also have a dedicated course that is a link below that actually walks through all the different types of interviews you'll have in a tech sales interview process. Not only did I make this, but I had a colleague of mine that works at a Fortune 500 company go through and we recreated every single type of interview with real prompts that you can use if you would like as a reference. The only other thing I'd say is our bootcamp does come with full 100% live coaching from me, as well as tons of pre-recorded material like the interviews that I mentioned. Now that we're in these interviews, we want to stay in communication. Again, we don't want to look too desperate. We don't want to ask a billion questions, all of these different things. But ideally, at the end of each stage of the interview, we're going to close. We're going to ask about next steps like, hey, really appreciate your time. I'm curious based on our conversation, what your thoughts are on the next steps. Would really love to continue the dialogue. And just shut up. Don't make it anything more than it has to be at the end of each one. If you have a good first round interview, maybe you're going to meet a manager after that. After you meet the manager, if they have your approval, a lot of good companies are going to make you do some sort of exercise, whether that's a cold call, whether that's a cold email. Again, these are things that I've talked about in other videos. I've got links in the description below in terms of how to open a call, how to lead a call. You don't need to overcomplicate what this is, and if you have no sales experience, that is 100% okay. The last thing you want to do is overthink this and get very nervous. In general, for rules of thumb, again, I've got videos in much more depth, but when you're making cold calls, you want to be short and succinct when opening the call. And if anything, if you get nervous, the last thing you want to do is talk. Ask questions. So if you're calling and you're asking someone, hey, I was just wondering if you're looking for a scalable database. They might respond, try and give you some common challenges. And the inclination, if you're nervous, you've never done this before, is to talk and just keep talking because I need to be a confident salesperson. When in reality, you need to relax. You need to ask them questions. They're probably going to give you feedback about whatever their product is that you're selling. And you need to say, hey, that's great information. On that note, I was curious about this, and probe in further to their specific use case. How are they using their current product? How much are they spending, etc. On the email side, again, a great rule of thumb is short and sweet. I've also got a link to a video I made about a free email grader online that actually gives you feedback on sales emails. As a best practice, 3 sentences maybe max on cold openers. If it's situationally appropriate and maybe they continue a dialogue back and forth, maybe you add more information. But again, I've got more relevant videos to that linked in the description. Lastly, if there's anything I can say about this entire process is do not overcomplicate this. This doesn't need to be your Rocky moment. This doesn't need to be this huge gargantuan effort. Instead, minimize your distractions. Take a day like I talked about on that first step, where if you don't know anything about tech sales and this is interesting now, we're gonna turn off all notifications. We're gonna put our phone in a separate room for an hour, and we're gonna pull up 3 or 4 separate videos about a discovery call. What is tech sales? Day in the life. What is an SDR? How does an SDR function in a tech sales organization, etc. Whether it's Google, whether it's YouTube. We're going to have a very focused hour. Make sure we're taking notes if we need to, write things down for the sake of memorization. And then the next day, we're gonna do the exact same thing with the free bootcamp that I've linked below in terms of resume optimization and LinkedIn optimization. That is going to take longer, so maybe if you only have an hour a day, still do that focused hour, but block maybe 3 days total to get that resume and that LinkedIn in order. The reason that I say this is I talk to a lot of people and there's so many what ifs. Well, I've never sold before, or I'm 40, or whatever it is. Like, how do I break into tech sales? And it's like, this is so besides the point. If you truly want to get into tech sales, you don't need to overcomplicate this. What managers want to see is someone who is truly hungry and able to do the job well. And if you're not communicating that and you're worried about all these little details, or like, oh, what if this line in my resume isn't perfect, or how do I do a cold call? I've never done one. You're overcomplicating it. The way that you do this is by educating yourself and learning further about the process. So hopefully this step-by-step guide can demystify what it is. Again, this is what, like a 10 or 15 minute video. There's no way that you're going to see this and be ready to go. But I've laid out the steps in terms of how you might do it and break it down and make it in simple chunks to slowly work your way up to being able to break into tech sales. It's been great to see a lot of people that have gotten value out of this channel. I know some of you have commented that these videos have helped you break in or just get better at sales in general. So I really appreciate it. I hope this helps, and we will see you next week. Thanks.